Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy, and we are back once again for our weekly discussion videos on Game of Thrones Season 8, the final season of Game of Thrones. It's absolutely horrible week on, like we're getting closer and closer to that end where we're going to have no more Game of Thrones, apart from we're going to have 5 prequel series apparently. But
Is it 5 prequel series?
5 was originally announced. I know that I think the one coming out is called The Long Night or something like that.
There was going to be one which was Duncan Ed.
Yeah, maybe that's part of the 5. Maybe we're going to get Robert's Rebellion.
Yeah.
Who knows? The possibilities are quite literally endless. Yeah. But we are talking today about episode 2 of season 8, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, and we're getting closer to that episode 3, Battle at Winterfell, which is going to be absolutely amazing. But yes, so once again, it's actually the structure for this one's going to be very, very simple. Yes. I'm going to pass over to Tate in a second to explain it. But like episode 1, well, episode 1 had 2 locations. So, I mean, you look at previous series where we were jumping all over the map. It was absolutely ridiculous to keep.
There was one episode where it was something stupid like the Wall. We had Beyond the Wall. We had Winterfell.
Dragonstone.
Iron Islands, Dragonstone. We had the Eyrie. We had the Twins. We had King's Landing, and we had one of the southern cities as well. And it was just ridiculous. I think that must have been season 5 or season 6, where it just bounced all around.
Then last week we just had Winterfell and King's Landing. This week and probably...
Chris, don't you forget about
last time. Okay, that was like, okay, whatever.
The only location they have this series.
Yeah, predominantly 2 locations. This week's episode, 1 location, and next week's episode also probably 1 location. So... I believe we're going to split this into a day and night cycle. Is that correct?
Yes, we are. So instead of starting with north and south, working from the very north of Winterfell to the south of Winterfell, because that would make no sense at all, we're just going to be going with Winterfell, events that happen in the day, events that happen in the night. And because of that, it may be slightly out of order from which the events happened within the episode, but this is just combining the events together, which does makes sense when we explain what happens and we try and analyze it. And then we'll go into the night, which is looking to basically be the setup for the battle.
Yeah.
And we know that episode 3 is going to be 1 hour, 22 minutes of battle. Now, I want to go out and say that with a lot of battle sequences and with a lot of episodes, for example, the Battle of the Bastards, you had all the events in the battle taking place in that episode. So you had the setup for the battle taking place in that episode, you had the battle itself, and you had a little bit of the aftermath. With this entire episode is the setup. So instead of it being an episode dedicated to a battle, so the setup, everyone getting ready, and then the battle itself, they are leaving that 1 hour 22 just for the battle, which is absolutely unheard of in TV or film. Like, even with Helm's Deep, the battle includes the setup and a little bit of the aftermath.
And it's also intercut with a lot of other things going on. You like bomb off and focus on Frodo and Sam at Osgiliath. Yeah. You've got the Ents taking down Isengard. It keeps cutting back to Helm's Deep. So
this is going to be possibly the biggest TV event of the last 10 years, barring Breaking Bad's finale.
Now, my hope is that with the next episode, it being an hour and 20-minute long battle scene, that I don't want them to kind of, pardon the expression, blow their load essentially this early on in the series, because I want that epic battle. Because I want that epic battle to be reserved for the finale.
Well, I think a little bit of inside information that we got from George, because there has been quite a lot of leaks this week. I mean, for this episode alone, it was leaked onto Amazon in Germany about 4 or 5 hours before the actual episode aired. So funnily enough, we watched it before, I watched it before the episode was actually meant to air, because we get it in the UK. That means staying up until 2 o'clock in the morning. Pointless. If you can watch it at 10 o'clock at night, you'll watch it at 10 o'clock at night. But one thing that they have also leaked is the names of the episodes coming up. I want to say that the episode 4 is called The Iron Throne. Episode 5 is called Aegon's Conquest, and the last episode is A Song of Ice and Fire. I cannot remember what episode 3 is. I feel like episode 3 is going to be just the battle for Winterfell.
Yeah, I think that's the name I've seen floating around as well. I don't know.
At the same time, it would make no sense because episode 1 was called Winterfell.
Could be called The Long Night, or is there an episode called The Long Night?
I don't think there has been yet. So that would be a brilliant name for the episode if that is the case. But they've been very tight on their episode names. I'm not sure whether that is the episode name, but that seems to be what is leaked.
Before we get into the main elements and you know, break this down meticulously throughout the episode, I'm going to give my general thoughts on this episode. I'm unsure whether I think I like this one more than episode 1, and the reason that I love this episode, and as we'll get into, you're essentially seeing all these characters together probably for the last time. Next episode, not everyone's going to make it out. At least I certainly hope not. I know that the main players are still going to be alive, but we have seen pairings that we've seen since season 1, elements that have kicked in since season 2. And there's a few other callbacks as well in this episode, similar to how episode 1 had callbacks to some of the early seasons, some like early lines. One that comes to mind right now is Tyrion's "I always thought I'd die at the age of 80 with a belly full of wine and a girl's mouth around my cock." Like, that comes back. I like that. Yeah. It's funny. But really, I equate this episode, and I'm going to compare it to Lord of the Rings again with Helm's Deep. That moment before Helm's Deep where everyone's saying, you know, it's hopeless, we're all going to die, all hope is lost, this is the last stand for us against an insurmountable force that's going to take us down. Now, with a 3-hour movie like Game of Thrones, that stuff can take that setup initially can take, you know, anywhere from half hour to 45 minutes. Essentially, it's your second act of a movie, and then your battles like your big third act, your climax. That's kind of the way that I see these first 3 episodes of Game of Thrones of season 8. And it will be interesting to see whether they replicate that structure for episodes 4, 5, and 6. I'm assuming that episode 4 is going to be a very slow episode again, building those stakes back up, people, you know, gathering themselves after the battle, you know, increasing stakes in episode 5, and then we get our finale again in the final episode. So really, like, if you look at the running times for this, I mean, we had like about an hour for the first one, maybe an hour and 10 minutes. This one was an hour. The next episode is an hour 20. You're essentially looking at, you know, close to like a 3-hour movie in these first 3 episodes. And you've got your setup, you've got your middle section here where everyone's like, all hope is lost. And then your final episode is going to be that big action climax. So it's a very clever structure, really.
I'll go ahead and say it's very difficult predicting what happens in what episode and how it's going to play out. In this episode, I know we're still not talking about the episode's intricate bits, but in this episode, just talking about the generalizations, the themes of it are more areas of reuniting. It's the futures of the characters being questioned, and it's almost that premise of what would you do if it was your last night on Earth?
Yeah.
And that is what the entire episode runs with. It's all about coming to terms with what you'd want to do. Do you go and get drunk? Do you find someone you love? Do you have a chat with someone you hated in the past? Are you just miserable? It's all to do with that. And speculation on the next episode. I mean, the next episode is called The Iron Throne, so obviously there's gonna be a lot more happening down in King's Landing. I'm gonna make a bold prediction here from the start for the next episode, without even going into context of this episode, off that information. I think no matter what happens at the Battle of Winterfell, I think that Winterfell might be able to defend itself. And I think they'll think, oh, good, we've won, we're doing a good job here, we survived the night. But I think they're not going to kill all the White Walkers. I think the White Walkers are just going to go south, and it's going to become Cersei's problem. And they're going to then have to chase them back down the south and have them basically in a massive battle in the final 2 episodes. So I think actually episode 4 might be one of the most intriguing episodes. If they suddenly realize that they've won the battle, but at what cost? They've won the battle, good. They were meant to defend Winterfell, they've defended all the people, but they've sacrificed the entire kingdom because of that. That's what I'm predicting. Now, my predictions have all...
As I said, you've made some very bold predictions in the past. Not all of them come true, but as I think I mentioned this last week, but when they do...
I am 90% sure that in the next episode, the one prediction that I want to go big on is the fact that the people who are going down to the crypts, the people who think they're safe down there in the crypts, are going to be killed by the old Starks who are kept down there.
Well, I mean, we're going to get into the episode now, but I mean, if that is the case, if they have to, I'm expecting that the Starks are going to have, well, all the people at Winterfell are going to have to flee south. but they already know of Cersei's deception, so you're going straight into like the jaws of death essentially. So very much looking forward to seeing how episode 3 plays out, but we're going to get into episode 2 now.
Yes, we are.
But it feels like a very small self-contained episode, but there's so many character moments, so we need to get into it now. And arguably like the biggest return, Jaime Lannister is back in Winterfell. Which isn't a very popular thing for a lot of people.
Do you know what? I'm going to go ahead and say it. There's no sister there this time, so there's no mischief that he can get up to.
Mm-hmm.
And he's immediately put on trial. It's an immediate continuation of the previous episode where he shows up and he's almost greeted by Bran at the gates, who just stares him out. And we know that Jaime knew that Bran survived, but I think it took him a second to realize who it was.
Yeah.
And throughout this entire episode, just like Bran haunting everyone, Bran definitely haunts Jaime more than most in this episode. And I think the connection here runs a lot deeper. To that sense, I think Bran knows a lot more about Jaime's future, and we'll move on to that in a second. But him immediately being put on trial, I quite liked the opening monologue that Dany gave about all the bad things that we would do to the man who killed our father and stuff like that. Because you do forget, even though he's called Kingslayer all the time, you do forget that the king that he killed was Dany's father.
Yeah, I mean,
and
we know that, but I mean, casual viewers might keep forgetting that, so I do like that they reminded us of that. But in that situation, you really don't want to be Jaime Lannister. You are like in the viper's nest right there.
Yeah.
Everyone hates your guts, apart from Brienne, and we'll get onto that in a second. But what I absolutely love about Jaime's character in this, and just he's such a well-written character, it's one of the best redemption arcs in any character I think I've ever seen. You go from this character, and you get this in the previously, and it plays a big part in it, a guy that will push a small child out of a window in order to kill him. But I love how in this episode he says, like, everything I've done, I would have just immediately done again, because I did everything for my family. And we've seen the likes of Sansa Stark, for example, in the previous episode, where everything she's doing is rigidly for her family. So these wars and everything...
Family is the biggest theme running throughout this entire show.
And I love that. I love that you know, Jaime's had this turnaround since arguably like season 2, definitely into season 3. But after everything he's done, he doesn't have any regrets for what he's done. And I really respect them for writing the character like that, because even when he says that, you don't then snap back and hate him, because he offers his perspective on it. And it's so well written how they did it. Like, you can understand his perspective and you connect that to the good.
It's almost like the speech from A Few Good Men. I demand the truth. Oh, really? It's just like, it is, honestly, the character has basically admitted his guilt and is basically saying, you can't handle the truth that we did it for family. You would have done exactly the same. Like, it was war. This is what happens within war. I do it again because it's for my family. But now I want to fight for the living. And he doesn't want to sit down in the south and wait for death to come to him. He'd rather take death head on, which is Jaime's kind of always wanted to take things head on. He's always been one to kind of rally the troops, go forward and take any action forward. Be that whether he loses his hand or whether he gets put in a terrible situation, he will do that because that is his morals.
What I like about this episode, and this kind of runs through everything, like the theme of change. Tyrion has a line later on, which is one of my favorite lines, probably that he has in all 8 seasons, where he says, "To the perils of self-betterment." And you really do see that. Like, I want to go back and, like, if you compare the pilot episode or the first 2 episodes of season 1 to the first 2 episodes of this season, I love seeing that change in characters, and I mean, it's perfectly been laid out here. And one of my favorite moments, still tying in with Jaime here on trial, it's probably one of my favorite character moments out of all 8 seasons, is where Brienne vouches for him.
Well, it was almost expected, because Brienne and Jaime have an unspoken friendship, which has run throughout since season 3, I want to say. End of season 2, start of season 3.
Yeah, I think so.
Where she has had to protect him and he's had to protect her. And from that, there's and an unrenowned amount of respect between each other.
Mm-hmm. And I love as well that Sansa says, you know, I trust Lady Brienne with my life. If she says that Jaime's okay, he can stay here. Much, would you say, a warmer welcome than Daenerys? Because at least Sansa came around to this one. We'll get onto the Sansa and Daenerys scene later on, though, because that was actually one of my favorite scenes in the episode as well. So I guess with all that being said, like, I'm really thankful that Jaime's back in the fold now. He's one of my favorite characters. Really hope he makes it out alive next episode, but who knows what can happen.
I hope so as well, and we'll move on to that in a minute.
Yeah.
Let's go on to Arya and Gendry. Now, these two characters, there's been tension building between them. Romantic tension, obviously, since season 1. Since season 2. And I think it's the only boy in the world who could make Arya swoon. But she's developed as a character so much from those early series that her way of flirting is by basically showing how far she's come. And there is that kind of connection between them, and we'll move on to it obviously later within the review when we move on to them actually getting together. But this has been building since episode 1, like since last episode. We knew as soon as they meet each other, it'd be one of those things which would kick off. And it's a small little scene which involves the two of them, which is somewhere between flirting and Arya trying to get what she wants. And it's a nice tie-over scene, and it could spell the end of one of the two characters. But I genuinely think, going back to that quote from series 1, Robert Baratheon, I have a son, you have a daughter.
We'll join our houses. Yeah.
We'll join our houses.
You're going to say, let's get it on. I thought that's what you were about to say then. I was like, oh, God, like they quite literally do.
We'll get an audience.
Arya just completely, well, pardon this, dominates this relationship. I'm sure she did.
Oh, completely.
She well and truly wears the trousers in this relationship to the point where she's like...
No. Gendry wears the trousers, but he's been told to take them off.
Yes, he can take his own bloody trousers off. Yeah, so like she's just basically dishing out the odds. Like she'll be like, "Have you made my weapon yet?" And then she delivers this monologue about death and like the faceless men, and death wears many faces, and she's throwing these like obsidian daggers at the wall. And Genji's just like, "Shit, yeah, no, I'll get right on that weapon. Yep, don't worry about it. I'll work on it right now. Please don't kill me." Like
all I can say is he gave her his spear.
He did. He stuck her with a pointy end. Rigorously, probably twice. Sheila says, "I'm so happy Gendry is back." Sheila absolutely loves Gendry, so it's good to get some Gendry love in the comments. Yeah, it's cool. I mean, as you said, like we saw it coming, like absolutely, but I didn't quite expect to see as much of Maisie Williams as we do later on in the episode, but we'll get on to that when we hit the nighttime stuff.
So let's move on to the what about the North argument. This all starts with Dany being pissed off at Tyrion for making mistakes, and Tyrion has been making a lot of mistakes recently, and that really has put his head on the chopping block, because he is the man who doesn't make mistakes. He's the man who outsmarts everyone else, and he's been called out in the last episode with Sansa saying, "I used to think you were the cleverest person in the world." He is starting to lose it, and Jorah kind of reminds Dany as to why she hired him, and even though Tyrion has made mistakes, they're not that ridiculously bad with the grand scheme of things, and Dany's kind of reminded of that, kind of almost humilified in that sense.
Well, she almost threatens him with death at one point, doesn't she? Like, and as I said, like I hate Daenerys as a character, but I'm liking that we're seeing this more tyrannical side to her, and that's
I've seen so many people online saying that she will become her father.
Yeah,
that starts. It's showing.
Yeah,
it really is showing.
They always say there's that, maybe not with Rhaegar so much, but certainly within most of them. And in the book, you can argue this is due to the inbreeding, but the element of madness is there. It's kind of like the dragon sickness, right, from like the Hobbit movies. There's that element of sickness in the family, and people thought she was this, you know, awesome, empowering woman figure. They loved her in season 1. And I was really hoping that they would go this route with her character, actually. I loved seeing that really, like, horrible side to her, that really dictatorial quality to her. And I was really hoping they wouldn't make her a sort of, like, I don't want to use the term Mary Sue, but this, you know, this paragon character where she's just inherently good.
It
She
shows
really
that
isn't, and we're seeing that with a lot of the people now.
she has interesting moments. I think series 3 defined that kind of two levels of her and herself. First of all, she burns someone alive just to win an army, just to pay for an army, which is ridiculous. And then she is heralded as the hero of the city. Now, to get there, she had to burn people alive.
Mm.
And people forget about that. Whether they were bad people or not, she just burnt them to a crisp. And then at the start of this series, we have the callbacks to Sam's family, and the fact that she burned the Tarleys alive. She did that whether they bent the knee or not, and she didn't show them any mercy. And yet, in that same episode, she's shown to be loving to Jon and kind of taking on dragon rides and stuff like that, including everyone else, showing that she is or could be a good queen. It's very hit and miss with her, and because of that, I feel like those misses, as it gets more tense, as it gets more kind of strenuous on her, I think we will see that darker side to her, especially towards the end of this episode. You see that once the reveal's made towards the end of this episode, her immediate thought isn't like, once we keep on saying as human beings, the first thought would be, holy shit, I'm your aunt, I shouldn't be doing you.
No.
Her immediate first thought was Iron Throne.
She has got tunnel vision for that throne. Like, she is gunning for that throne, and she doesn't care who gets in her way.
That does come up in this talk between Sansa and Daenerys, because Sansa says you're manipulating him, and I'll be honest, Daenerys completely turns around and basically completely convinced me that she'd fallen for Jon. She was up there doing the fight.
I thought that was a great comeback where we might be jumping a gun a little bit with this one, but we may as well talk about this now while we're on the topic.
Yeah.
Where she says who was manipulating whom, and she's talking about Jon, that, you know, I
thought that was a very well put together argument.
So did I, but then it comes back around again, where Sansa can just see straight through that immediately, and that's evident with what we just talked about there with the revelation at the end, where, as you said, she doesn't go, but I loved you, Jon, like, oh my God, I'm your auntie, like, I love you so much, but we can't make this work now. She just bypasses that, this whole facade of love.
Not even a let's talk about this after the battle.
Yeah.
It's straight into, that means that you are the last living male heir to the Iron Throne, and that's immediately where she goes to. Like, Jon, when he found out first, his immediate thoughts obviously would have been his actual real parents. No, you're not telling the truth. He takes a very, like, questionable tone on it. She takes an immediate, she says that's impossible, but it's almost as if she knew.
Yeah.
Like, she's kind of very, very straight to the point, very stark with it. And it's very interesting, because that is the opinion that she takes with what about the North. And Sansa has a point. Like, after the wars are over, what are you going to do with the North? I mean, it's clear that if Jon and Dany get through this, the thing that will happen is Jon will be given the North, and will be given more than the North, but they will be the overall queen. But Sansa is very right. They said they'll never bend the knee again, the Northerners. And even if she does save the day here at the Battle of Winterfell, they're still not going to bend the knee, because they're stubborn, and the last two kings have basically murdered their families. So you're left with that terrible situation where the best option really would be for Daenerys to give up the North and just say, look, you can keep the North, I'll keep the South, we'll put a border up, or we'll do something, and we won't be at war with each other, because you'll look after your own people, I'll look after the rest of the Seven Kingdoms.
And I mean, as long as Jon's in power, right, there would be that truce between the two. So the whole thing would be hunky-dory, just like compromise. But
Daenerys cannot let the North go.
She wants it all. She wants all seven kingdoms.
She wants all seven kingdoms. And maybe that's because politically, if she allows the North to live, then she'll get rebellions in all of the other seven kingdoms. But at this stage, politically, she's still not willing to do sacrifices. And Jon is. And this is why I think Daenerys won't last till the end. She cannot last till the end. It's impossible for her to do that, because the entire purpose of the story of Game of Thrones, other than family, is about sacrifice. It's about giving up your morals, giving up your rights, giving up everything, maybe even giving up your birthright to deal with the greater good. And that's done for many of the characters. Tyrion had to abandon his family, and he's joined the fight that he thinks is right. Jon has given up his titles, bent the knee, because he knows that the real struggle is up against the Whites and the White Walkers. So the fact that Dany isn't able to sacrifice herself and able to kind of give up the tiniest little edge, give up any amount of fear, give up any amount of nobility or any amount of land, it just shows that she could become that tyrannical leader. And I think she will.
See, we keep thinking like the big bad at the end, the one to take out the big evil villainess is going to be Cersei. What if they throw us for a loop and it actually turns out to be Daenerys, and then they all have to overthrow her?
I wouldn't be surprised at all.
It's food for thought for the final couple of episodes. But
Song of Ice and Fire. I'll say this now. Jon is the man of the North. He is the Song of Ice and Fire. He is the child born of the fire of the Targaryens and the ice of the Starks. Now, whether that means he has to defeat two villains, one on the ice front being the White Walkers and the other being Daenerys on the fire front, and him being the combination of that, who knows? But for now, yeah,
we're getting a lot of love for Sansa in the comment section, and I'm very glad about this. Never would I think that Sansa would be in my top 3 favorite characters of this season, but by God, she
is number 1 at the moment.
Maybe it's the lasting impact. Maybe it's like the Force ghost of Littlefinger that lives on within her, and that's why I now have love for Sansa. I don't know, but I just love how headstrong she is, how savvy she is with everything. She's so great.
We're going to skip over one of the topics and we'll go back to it just because we're going to go on with the theme with Sansa. But immediately after this meeting, Sansa gets reunited with Theon in possibly the nicest character moment from this episode.
Yeah, I'm going to own up. I bawled my eyes out at this scene. It was and no dialogue. There's no like massive. No. It's just all in the acting, and both Alfie Allen and Sophie Turner knocked it out of the park with this reunion. They were incredible.
I believe in Alfie Allen.
I believe in him too. I already believed in him. I believe in him even more now.
I believe he's going to die next episode.
Me too. Me too. We're both on the same wavelength there, and because of that, this moment, having seen this moment, and his final one at the end where he says, like, "I'll fight for you if you have me," it's going to happen, and it's going to be absolutely brutal seeing that next episode. But what a turnaround for that character, right? Like, if he does bow out next episode,
it's been brilliant.
Perfect journey for the character. But
Chris,
yeah,
do you want to change your mind on the best Game of Thrones character? If he, you know how we did the bracket.
Yeah. Oh.
And we ended up with, was it?
Who was it up against? I can't remember.
Was it? I'm just trying to think of who was in the final now. It was one of the who's the father of the Sand Snakes? One of the best. Pedro Pascal plays him. He won it in the end.
Oh, Oberyn Martell. Yeah.
Oberyn Martell won the best character in the end. But honestly,
you know what? You said it back then. I believe in Alfie Allen. Like, is this another one of Tate's bold predictions? I think it might be, because my God, we're one episode away from his impending demise, probably.
I demand a revote.
It would be actually good to maybe not do the same category again of best character, but like an updated one of Game of Thrones once it's all done. Best episode, we could definitely do that, or there'll be some. Drop some suggestions in the comments, guys, for Battle of the Brackets for a upcoming Game of Thrones one. It only seems fitting. I mean, we started the show based off the namesake of Battle of the Bastards. And Game of Thrones is coming to an end, so it would be nice to do a Game of Thrones one to sort of like wrap it all up. Not to say we're ending Battle of the Brackets, but just the whole Game of Thrones thing.
So the next topic we have to move on to is who Jaime will fight for. Now, this has two different parts, because he has a conversation with Brienne and basically lays himself down on the line and says, "Look, I've been a dick in the past, but I want to fight under you. I'm not the fighter I used to be. I'm an old man. I want to go out for one last rodeo." And then we get a second scene with Bran, where Jaime finally confronts Bran, finally has a long chat with Bran. Sorry, we can't call Bran anymore. It's the Three-Eyed Raven, as he keeps on referring to himself as. And there's no hate there. There's nothing else there. In fact, there's almost a thank you given, because it's led Bran to becoming the Three-Eyed Raven, led Bran to having something more. And it's led Jaime to where he is now. And Bran poses the question, will there even be an afterwards for Jaime? And whether that's a hint at Jaime dying here, or whether that's Bran kind of saying to Jaime, how did you know? like there's two ways you can interpret it. There's the way of there will be no afterwards. You go out in this fight, but you have to go out doing a certain job, or how did you know there would be an afterwards? You have a lot to play in the wars to come. Those are the two ways you can see it.
Yeah. I mean, that statement right there from Bran is very telling. If that is sort of like the final saying of the entire series and there's going to be nothing left, like I've got to assume there's got to be someone left at the end. Like, I think if everyone died and it ended like in a Shakespearean tragedy, I think that would be doing a disservice to the show, because it would all kind of seem for nothing, which is quite a unique point if that's what you're going for. But I think to last for 8 series, to let everyone just die and no one comes out the victor at the end, I think that'd be doing a disservice to the story and the characters. But no, like I'm trying to read into everything Bran says now.
Oh, everything, literally everything. And you got to watch back through all of the little callbacks from the entire series that could have been leading up to this point. All of the visions of the future, anything, literally any line from the show you could take. Absolutely anything from the show you could take, and it will probably be a premonition of what's going to happen in the next 4 episodes. I'm going to go ahead and say next episode, Tyrion's thing about Jon casting a very large shadow. I reckon Jon is going to cast a really large shadow at some point in the next episode, because it's going to be at night. He's going to be holding a sword. There's going to be like fire or something like that. He's going to cast a shadow. That's my prediction. But like, that's just a tiny little thing, and no one will pick that up if it happens, but at least I'll know. I think at this stage, whatever Bran says, you should take as just gospel. Like, it has to be taken almost literally. And because of that, I think Jaime doesn't survive this battle, which is really a shame, because I thought he was going to kill Cersei.
Because they did kind of set that up in a very subtle way as well. Like, if you don't know the locations on the map that they were stood on at the beginning of season 7, then you will not have understood that reference. I don't know. I think he's going to make it out of it. I really do. Now, whether Brienne will, I don't know. But this is what I mean. This is why it's so good, because we now have stakes for the next episode. We know people are going to die, and it's going to be horrible. We don't know who. So this is really cool. So we need to talk about the Night's Watch returning as well, very, very quickly. Really nice to see. One of my favorite moments in the episode is where Jon Snow's just about to embrace Dolores Ed, and then Tormund just comes in and steals the hug. It was great to see.
Crow.
It was nice seeing this dynamic. One of the best scenes is seeing Jon, Sam, and Dolores Ed on the wall, kind of reminiscing about old times. Really nice that they brought up the names Gren and Pip as well, because it seems like, you know, you have so many characters in Game of Thrones, so many characters that have passed away many seasons ago that viewers will probably have forgotten about them now, but I like that they didn't forget about them. And again, it's what we keep talking about. It's those callbacks, it's those throwbacks to the equilibrium that was set up at the beginning of season 1. Really nice moment between them all. I thought that one.
And the final thing we have in the episode is the futures for all the characters. Now, this is characters saying that they've got a future, and you're immediately going, they're dying next episode. So let's start off with Grey Worm. Grey Worm asking Missandei if what she wants to do after the battle if they survive, and them saying they want to go to Narth, they want to see the beaches again, which I'm not going to lie, I watched this episode twice. Both times I thought she said North. Instead of saying Narth. I'm going to go out and say one of them's dead. Just one of them. We then look at the other character moments, which prove to be futures for the episode. The people discussing their future, what will happen after the battle. Tyrion going down south and wanting to kill Cersei.
That's actually really. We've just had a comment about that from. Please tell me if I'm going to pronounce your name wrong. I'm really sorry. It's either Iris or Iri. Iri Black, Q&A. Do you think that Tyrion saying, maybe after I'm dead I will kill her, meaning Cersei, is foreshadowing that he will actually die and Arya will use his face to kill her?
I don't think that Cersei would even trust Tyrion. Even if... I know they've met up recently, as they met up only 2 episodes ago now. But I don't think that she would even let him near her at all under any circumstance. So I'm going to go with no on that. Also, I'm pretty sure that unless George R. R. Martin's going to really throw us for a loop here, but he said that his wife would leave him if Tyrion died under any context, whether that's the show or whether that is the books. So I think he's the only character we can kind of call safe. As far as not being dead until at least the final episode.
Yeah.
But
in terms of characters that we know are going to be dead, it's Iris, by the way. Iris has said that Grey Worm is dead for sure. Nobody cares. I don't even think he gets a speaking line in this part with Sunday, does he?
I think Brienne's dead, but we'll move on to that in a bit.
Yeah.
I feel like I think Tormund might actually survive now, which is really weird. You could go through the entire list of characters and just go dead, dead, alive, alive, dead, 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 and stuff like that if you wanted to. We have the Night's Watch coming back, and they say basically we have until sunrise, and they will all be dead. The battle, I think, will follow a very interesting turning point, possibly. That if they last until sunrise, or any character who lasts until sunrise will be alive afterwards.
Yeah. So with all that, should we move on to the nighttime stuff now? Because we still have a lot of stuff.
Let's move on to the night. And the first thing I've got written down is Ghost is back, because we talked about the Night's Watch sitting up on the wall. They didn't forget about Ghost, which is good.
I almost forgot about Ghost. And in all honesty, like, I want people in the comments as well to, if you have this problem as well, the screen is visually so dark a lot of the times. Now, I know a lot of it is set at nighttime. That can't be avoided. But even still, as a show that's set at nighttime, it is very, very difficult to make out the image sometimes. And it wasn't until like midway through the conversation that I realized Ghost was just chilling there on the left-hand side of the screen next to everyone. I was just like, oh, yeah, there was no introduction scene with Ghost again.
Was it one of those just kind of starting seeing, oh, shit, it's Ghost?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've absolutely loved the dire wolves, but unfortunately, for the ones that are remaining, they seem to have really neglected them. We had that really nice Nymeria scene from, I believe it was last season, wasn't it? Season 7.
Will Nymeria come back?
I mean, I hope so, but like how they've just completely dropped and forgotten about the direwolves. Then
imagine Arya running into battle, riding Nymeria, like she comes at just the last moment and saves Arya. That'd be interesting. But we move on to because the Winterfell at night scenes are what we were talking about earlier. What would you do if it was your last night? And like we said, sometimes you reminisce on the past, sometimes you would go and find someone to be with. And Arya chooses wrong here. She chooses Gendry, which I know has been a romance building, but come on, you've got Pod there. You've got Tripod right there. The man who made 3 prostitutes basically give him a free session because he was that good. And she chose Gendry.
One of the universe's greatest mysteries. That was such a great scene in like one of the earlier seasons as well, where it was Tyrion and Bronn, right, where they're trying to get him drunk or giving him wine, like tell us details. So Arya and Gendry. So, I mean, we spoke a bit about this before we went live. It was really, apparently, I'm not the only one thinking this as well. Me and the rest of the viewership of Game of Thrones thought it was very weird to see partially naked, Maisie Williams. In my head, I guess I still think she's like kind of around, because we've seen her grow up since that first season, right? So it's kind of awkward.
It's like seeing Hermione naked.
No, I was going to say, so like with Hermione, we were kind of the same age as Hermione when the first Harry Potter movie came out. So as we aged, our attraction to Hermione grew. So that was fair play. But
wait, Chris, very, very quickly before we move on, what is the appropriate?
I knew you were going to ask me this.
What is the appropriate film?
This is okay. This is a conversation I've had with many of my friends, by the way, and we all have differing answers. Legally, I'm going to say Order of the Phoenix.
I'm also going to say Order of the Phoenix.
Although I can say this because I grew up around the same time. This is not me saying it as of now. This was me saying it back then. Like as you were growing up, you were kind of seeing changes in like Azkaban, I would say. When they got, you were like, okay, this is a thing, but legally, I'm going to say Order of the Phoenix, and that's what I'm sticking to. Thank you very much. So yeah, did you enjoy that Arya?
So Chris, legally, which season of Game of Thrones?
I haven't done my research on that one, so I will not suggest anything.
Hold your tongue.
The thing is, with like Sophie Turner has considerably aged since season 1, in my opinion. Maisie Williams obviously also has 2, but she still looks really little like she did in season 1, so it's just a little bit weird. And Gendry was like way older than her in season 1 as it is.
As far as characters are concerned, I think they're the same age in the books. But there was some really weird stuff that came out this week. Like George R. R. Martin originally planned for Arya to have a relationship with Jon, which would have been really fucking weird. Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, that's like some Lannister stuff right there.
Oh yeah. Oh, he's really into his incest, so it's all good.
He's a strange, dirty old man, isn't he, George R. R. Martin? Writes some incredible books when he actually releases them, but Jesus, the guy's got problems.
But this romance has been bubbling, and I actually quite like the scene. I think it fit both of the characters perfectly, and I think someone posted up on Facebook, which kind of made me relook at the scene, and it was "A girl is now a woman." This is her growing up, and whether it is her last night or his last night, either way, I think they are happy with how far they've come, both as characters. We didn't see Gendry for a while, but he was one of my favorite characters from season 2, season 3, because of the way that he treated Arya, because the way that he treated her like she was a lady, and she hated that, but that was banter. And he knew he could get away with it, but he still saw her as his equal, and she saw him as her equal. So that relationship has been building since then, and I'm happy that it's finally got a payoff.
We've actually, and a lot of people in the comments right now are saying that they really hated the Arya sex scene. Iris says, I don't care about the nudity because I understand she is a young adult. It's because it's not in her character. She's never had any curiosity about sex up till this point. Red Plum Jelly says it was a power move sexually, but it wasn't necessary. And then Iris also says the side boob was so CGI'd. I also thought that. I also thought the side boob looked a tad strange. I didn't know if she was wearing something like some kind of nude material to hide it. If that was CGI, you know, we sacrificed having elephants for this, guys. We sacrificed having elephants for a never-ending story dragon riding episode 1 and a CGI side boob in episode 2. Where are the priorities, guys?
Maybe the elephants do come back in one of the later episodes. That would be amazing if they just showed up and you're like, oh shit.
I want that moment from Return of the King where like King Theoden just like looks to the side with this look of horror on his face, and then you see those advancing elephants.
I want Bronn to like ride one of the elephants and kill it whilst killing everyone on it, and then jump down and look at Tyrion and just go
with his crossbow.
Tyrion just goes, it still only counts as one.
Yes. Oh right, so that happens,
and this is probably the largest section of possibly the entire episode. The chat around the fire.
Did we talk about the Hound, by the way, and Beric Dondarrion? That was before Arya. It was nice to get like a little bit of a moment there, that uneasy, kind of repeating what we said about episode 1, that uneasy tension between the two characters. It's not a whole lot to talk about.
I'm gonna also make another bold prediction. The Hound is scared of fire. Beric Dondarrion, I'm pretty sure, is going to die in next episode. What if the Hound gets thrown into a situation where he is disarmed, he's weaponless, and the only thing that he can pick up near him is Beric Dondarrion's flaming sword? The man who is afraid of fire has to wield fire to kill the enemies.
Well, that would be cool.
Fucking awesome.
And that goes back to a theory that Sandor Clegane is the Lord of Light, Lightbringer.
Yeah.
That would be
reborn. That would be fucking phenomenal.
And if he gets that, can he kill Gregor Clegane with the flaming sword?
I'm telling you now, Clegane Bowl, I'm going to be so pissed off if the Hound dies. I'm going to be so angry.
I don't think he will. I think it's a foregone conclusion that the brothers need to fight each other one last time.
Yeah.
And if it's with that flaming sword, I love that. I love poetic justice in like media or something where it comes back to bite a character like that.
I want there to be air horns. I want it to be like an entire episode just dedicated to it. I want it to be just whatever episode it is. I want it to be the entire episode based around Clegane Bowl. I want all of the other characters, even if it's in the middle of a battle sequence, everyone clears, and then it's just these two fighting off. Everyone grabs popcorn. Everyone's fucking watching. Like, I want it to be just the most mental battle sequence of all time. Like, I'm talking raid 2 levels of battle sequence. Like, I want them to proper choreograph it, a fight to the death, absolutely full on. That would be amazing.
We can live in hope if he gets to King's Landing. We can live in hope of that. The chat around the fire then. So this is the big one. This had me in tears. This was making me feel all of the feels, and also has many of my favorite character moments. Moments like this are great because, you know, I was hoping that these moments would be scattered through the battle scene in the next episode, but it makes sense. This is essentially going to be, as I said, like a 3-act structure, or if you want to group 2 and 3 together, a big 2-hour, 2-parter episode. Everything, man, Peter Dinklage in this episode. Like, say what you want about Tyrion, like the character has evolved into a different character. He's much more level-headed. He's you know, he's less whoring, less of the funny quippy lines. He's more of a serious business guy. This was a nice insight to kind of how he used to be, a little bit, not to the degree he was, but
just that subtle things like pouring out too much wine for Pod, and just the way that he articulated within the conversation, the way that he drew people in. The fact that towards the end he asked for a song, he's questioning about the knights and stuff like that. This scene had almost everything, and it was just really, really nice that we could have this one last moment where people were just sat around the fire, waiting for death, but having a good time. And it goes almost back to one of the things that was said earlier. We're all going to die, but at least we'll die together. With Tormund being the bringer of happiness in that sense. He has possibly one of the funniest lines in the whole of Game of Thrones, or one of the funniest speeches.
We spoke about this before. We both, immediately as he said the line, we interpreted this in such a different way. He talks about, and then I got into bed with the giant woman, and I thought, oh, please tell me he fucked a giant. Like, I kind of wish that was the backstory. Like, the one that he eventually said about being suckled by a giant, that was nowhere near as interesting as the images that were going through my head.
He said giant's milk and then downed the beer.
Yeah. In his own drinking horn, which was amazing. I love that drinking horn. It was so cool. I will say something about Tormund, though, and I don't want to bring the mood down too much about Tormund, but do you feel the character has regressed in a way where and similar to the Hound in this respect, the writers are just writing him to just have constant quippy dialogue? He is now just serves as comic relief. He has ceased to be a character unto himself.
I think the Hound could be looked into a little bit more. Tormund is definitely the comic relief character now. But I still think he's got the fight in him. And that's seen all the way throughout the Battle of the Bastards. That's seen in the scenes where he is actually fighting. And when we look at the Hound, he's miserable. He's constantly miserable. And he's trying to make light of the situation by insulting others. And I feel like maybe the series will finally end with him at peace in whatever way that is. I don't think his character, seeing as he's been there since the first episode, his character couldn't end in any other way. And I think he'll survive the battle, but I don't think the characters have been dumbed down. I don't think the characters have lost any of their characteristics. I just think that their characteristics have almost been heightened.
Yeah.
So they've almost been stretched out a little bit more. So the Hound was a little bit miserable, a bit of an asshole. He is now completely miserable, complete asshole. But he's still on the good side, and he's still there for the good fight. Tormund used to be a little bit quippy, but a big fighter. Now they've kind of almost reversed that. He's a big fighter, but he's also he is the person to come up with the best lines. And whether that's because he's new into this world of knights and lords and stuff like that, and it's an interesting point of view, but
I think Tormund should die next episode because, I mean, I cussed out season 7 for doing this, but they've teased, as someone said in the comments earlier, They've teased his death twice now, and something's got to give. It like absolutely has to at this point with Tormund. We do get some nice moments where he's still trying to flirt with Brienne, but I think we need to talk about the namesake of the episode now. The title of the goddamn episode is called The Night of the Seven Kingdoms, and this is the picture that I used for the social media and everything. This is the key moment. Arguably the nicest scene between Jaime and Brienne. Jaime finally knights Brienne. And it's one of the most sincere, one of the most human, most heartwarming moments ever. We talk about Gwendolyn Christie as well. Now, to me, she's very hit and miss. She can be good. I think the Phasma stuff in Star Wars has kind of put me off her a little bit. And also, she hasn't really had all that much to do recently in Game of Thrones. But her smile is at the end of this episode is one of the most infectious and real moments I think I've seen from her performances before. And I was getting misty watching the scene. It was a beautifully put together scene. Really, really lovely character moment.
I want to say something that made this character moment a little bit better was the fact that she almost denied it at first, and Pod gives her this look as if to say, no, this is what you've always wanted. Take the opportunity. Because
she wanted it from Renly eventually, in more ways than one, apparently.
Yeah.
In like season 2, she was going to be... Was she a knight there already? Or had she gone through the formalities?
She hadn't gone through the formalities.
Mm.
But now she is a knight of the Seven Kingdoms, and she's going to die that way, because I think she's going to die next episode. I think Jaime is going to be saved by her as almost like a final payback of her protecting him. And even though she's one of the best fighters and she has a Valyrian steel sword, I still think that's going to come into play at some point.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting one. It's a very, very nice character moment, which I'm sure is going to make people... I think it's a setup so that next episode she has her happy moment. She has the one moment in her life where she's happy, and that's going to be dashed away so quickly.
Mm-hmm. I'm just... we didn't mention this earlier where Jaime offers his sword to Brienne and says, like, I will fight for you. I'm not as good as I used to be, but I'll fight beside you if you'll have me. Goes back to earlier as well, where she vouches for Jaime and says that I'd quite happily stand in combat with this man. And we're going to see that next episode. And boy, if something bad happens to either of these characters, it's going to break my damn heart.
Yes, it will.
And that's what Game of Thrones does best, right? At least it used to. Maybe this is what it's been building to.
And within that, we just before we move on to, I'd say, the final scenes, we have a little intersection within the scene of them in the hall with the two Mormonts finally talking to each other, which I believe has to be the first time they've spoken to each other.
Mm-hmm.
With Lady Mormont being the badass that she is, basically saying she'll be out there on the battlefield, and Jorah basically trying to convince her not to be. It's an interesting one, and I don't know how it's going to play out. That's kind of all I can say about it.
Mm-hmm.
But Jorah does get given Heartsbane, is it?
Yes, the family, the Tarly family sword.
The biggest fucking sword I've seen in the show.
Mm-hmm. There was a nice close-up of it as well. I'm just waiting for that moment where they say, buy your replica Heartsbane sword now, only $300.
But it's fucking huge. And Jorah will use it in the battle. I'm sure of it.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you think that Jorah will die trying to protect Dany?
Yeah, of course he will. I mean, I think it's going to be... We've seen this we've seen this all the way throughout Game of Thrones. If anyone's read the books now, I've read all the books, but it's been a long while since I have read them. So as I mentioned in the comments, I can't remember all of the lore and all of the intricacies, but what I can remember is that there are a bunch of people now still alive in the books at the end of the latest book that came out that in the show before then had already been killed off in the show. I think it's just a case that they have to deal with so many characters, so many actors, so many salaries, and maybe it's a way of condensing the plot, streamlining the plot, and just getting it to the essential stuff and adapting it as such. And I think that's, in all honesty, what we're going to get before the last couple of episodes of this season. I think they're going to be... We still have a massive cast of characters. A lot of the characters that are still there in the background that haven't really said anything, such as Varys, Grey Worm, Missandei.
I'd say sacrifice for the greater good is going to be the theme of next episode.
Yeah, but I do think it's also going to be an opportunity for the screenplay, for the screenwriters and just the show in general, to get rid of that character baggage that we don't need. Just get them all gone in a battle,
Streamline it,
and then focus on your key players. It's what the characters you mentioned last time. Basically, all of your main characters from season 1 are still going to be alive. So we move on to Jenny of Oldstones, the song that is sung by Pod in the main episode, and then at the end credits, it's sung by Florence and the Machine. Beautiful. I'm not a big Florence and the Machine fan, but boy, God, do I love that song at the end credits. This song reminded me, and I'm going to go back to Lord of the Rings with this one, it reminded me of Pippin's song from Return of the King. That very, omen of dread kind of song, this hopeful pang during the song, but against like an insurmountable enemy, and they all know that they might not make it. In fact, there's a good chance they'll probably all die tomorrow. And it's this beautiful sort of really lovely melody as well, which I guess was written by Ramin Djawadi. And again, the tears came during that song. It was a beautifully edited moment. We see everyone spending their last few moments with each other, or they're suiting up, or they're getting ready for war. And it's all that setup. It's all that, not foreshadowing, but building to what we're going to get in the next episode. Beautiful song, beautiful moment. And boy, if that is Podrick, the actor singing that,
it is him.
Guy's got pipes.
If you watch the behind the scenes, I think he actually had part in writing it, because they wanted someone to sing the song, and they only had the first line from the book. So the writers actually went and wrote the rest of it. But he actually sung the song himself on set on day. He has a good voice, and he was the only person, because they were like, oh, who can actually sing here? And he was the only person who actually kind of put his hand up and said, yeah, I can do it. So that's that. And it leads straight on to the final scene, which I think we can both say is a little bit of a frustrating scene character-wise. And I know that Bran was pointing everyone in the right direction for when to tell people what happened and stuff like that at various different points, by saying to Sam, you must tell Jon now. I think Jon should have maybe consulted Bran on this one, because I think his timing is awful with telling Dany that he is Aegon Targaryen, first in line to the Iron Throne. And I'll be honest, Dany didn't take it well. And we talked about this earlier on in the review. Her first impressions of this are immediately going to, you are now a threat to me. Yeah. As soon as this battle's over, you're as bad as Cersei is.
This was such an idiotic move on Jon's stance. And
he knows nothing, Chris.
He really doesn't in this case. Like, Jesus Christ. I don't think they're going to kill Jon Snow off, because to me, when they've already killed him off in the show before, resurrected him, it's pointless to kill him off again. Like, narratively, what is the point of doing that? That's just stupid to me. So I think he's going to be fine. But why he couldn't just play act? Like, he couldn't just pretend that he didn't know anything until all the battle was done, until Cersei was overthrown.
He could have. I'll go ahead and say this. He could have even pulled a Ned Stark. After the battle, we'll talk about my parentage.
Yeah. But speaking of Ned Stark, I was reminded of Ned Stark's stupidity, where he went to Cersei Lannister and said, like, basically, I know the truth of Joffrey's parentage. Absolutely stupid. But I do love that moment where Daenerys is about to lay down the law, but then it's like, oh no, we need to go and sort this battle out first. But that was not a smart move on Jon's point, and I really love where we end Daenerys' character at the end of this episode. It's going to be a very uneasy truce the next episode, but after that, I think that's where she's going to fly off the rails, and that's where I think you're going to have her being the main villainess of the show, if you will. Very interesting state, but this is what I love. Like, this series has been so good so far. I genuinely thought, after seeing season 7, and people know my thoughts on season 7, I thought it was one of the worst written seasons out of all of Game of Thrones.
I'd say season 5 was the worst, but 7 was definitely the second worst.
7, stuff just happened, right? Stuff just happened. And I was thinking about this. I was thinking, how would season 7 have been? Because it was it 6 episodes or 7 episodes?
7, I believe.
What would season 7 have been like if you'd have taken the first 3 episodes of this season and tacked them onto the end of season 7?
Amazing.
Because all the problem, I would still have all the problems I had with it, but
your episode 9 would be a little bit different, because this would have ended up being the episode 9, and I would have changed things around a little bit.
I just think you would have had that steady build towards the end, and then go out on like a big action climax for your season 7, and then maybe elongate your season 8 to more episodes. I don't know. That was just a thought that was going through my head earlier. I thought that might be an interesting experiment. But no, I'm really loving this series, because going into this series, I thought it's just going to be It's just going to be a simple case of Jon Snow is good, Daenerys is good, White Walkers are bad, fight them. That's Game of Thrones. That's essentially what Game of Thrones has come to. But whilst those are still the stakes, we've got the humans fighting the White Walkers. There is still so much uneasiness and tension and interplay, which I thought was all going to be done away with and sorted out by this point, and it really hasn't been. Especially with Jon Snow and Daenerys. So I'm really intrigued to see how this Song of Ice and Fire is going to play out.
Now the dead are here. They're out of time.
Yeah, they're here. We've got to get up with it now.
Something that I noticed, we have 3 blasts of the horn, which is meant to be the others, which is still nice. They've continued that over from previous series. And we've got the battle next episode, and it's going to be, hopefully, phenomenal. I really do hope that it lives up to the hype that it's got for it so far.
Now, I promised that I'd read, or I'd ask this question at the end. This was a comment from Red Plum Jelly, who says, "Do you think the battle for the Long Night will conclude next episode?"
Yes,
do you think it's going to be the case of what it was the one where Stannis showed up at the beginning of the following episode, which was still technically part of the battle?
I think that the battle will conclude by the end of the episode.
I think it will conclude as well, because I mean, it's an hour and 20, so I think maybe not all of those 20 minutes, but I do think we need to see the trajectory of where the next episode's going to go to. I don't think you can just end it on a battle, because in episode 4 you've got to build everything up. I think you don't want to give too much sense of finality to the next episode. You want to conclude the battle, but you also need to set up your characters, their objective, where are they going to go from here, how are they going to recoup, how are they going to pick themselves up. We've had another very, very brief question from Iris. Where is Robb's statue? I understand that they might not have his body, but why not build a statue for their ex-king in the north? I'm not actually aware of all the statues that are in the crypt. I don't know if there's an article on the internet where you can see all the statues down there, or
maybe we'll get a little bit of insight into it in the next episode, with people being in the crypt, like Varys and stuff like that, going, oh, and this was this person, like Bran the Builder, and this was Robb Stark, and so
we've got that shot as well of Arya running through the crypt, so we definitely know that some action, or at least the battle's going to start in the crypts, or there's going to be an element involved down there. So maybe we'll get close.
The dead are going to rise. The dead are going to rise in the crypt. Yeah. And whether it's that little girl saying, "Oh, I'll defend it," she's dead. She did. But I don't want to speculate more on the next episode. All I'm going to say is that it's what people have been looking forward to possibly the most from this season. Not even the conclusion, not even the final conclusion, but this specific episode, at least for me, is the thing that I've been looking forward to the most.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen so many things, mostly films. I've seen a lot of films where they'll dedicate such a portion to the battle. You know, I'm looking at Battle of the Five Armies, a film that's more or less entirely like an hour and a half, 2-hour battle scene. The scene from Matrix Revolutions, which is just shooting at the metal squid things for...
as a fan of Matrix, I love that scene.
It goes on for so long. So I've seen a lot of films where they devote so much time to the battle. And another example, and this might be quite a controversial one, because I know that we have at least one person in the comments that absolutely loves the Star Wars prequels, but the final fight between Anakin and Obi-Wan, once you're over that immediate initial, the battle is happening now, when the battle goes on for about 15 minutes, you're just watching a spectacle. You're forgetting all of the emotion and intricacies of that battle. And I really don't want that to happen with Game of Thrones. Like, I know that they've had battles in the show before, but they haven't been this long. and they still have managed to maintain a sense of tension and, you know, character. Characters are essentially what get us through anything. And you can throw in any battle in any film, but if you don't care about the characters and you don't care about the stakes, then you may as well not be watching it. It's just absolutely pointless. And I don't want that to happen next episode, but having seen this episode now and seeing a lot of the threads that were played out in this episode either come to an untimely end in the next episode or set up for future episodes, that's what's keeping me interested. And especially, I think the director as well. Has the director been released of the next episode?
I'm not sure. I'll have a look.
But if he's worked on some of the biggest episodes in the past, then I'm excited for it. I don't think it says yet, does it?
Pulling up IMDb. It's taking a while to load.
Oh, Miguel Spocknik, is it?
Oh, he has worked on a lot of episodes. He's worked on a lot of episodes.
He's directed Hard. Okay, he directed Hard Home. I knew he directed one of the big battle ones. I mean, when that first played out, right, that blew us away when we saw that for the first time. We did not expect.
He's also directing episode 5 of this. He directed Winds of Winter, Battle of the Bastards, Hard Home.
Oh, okay.
And The Gift.
Well, I mean, the Battle of the Bastards was incredible.
Phenomenal.
So yeah, I think it's absolutely in safe hands. My final thoughts on this episode: really loved it. I kind of compare it to episode 1 again, where it is that slow build with the characters, but because we've had such a long slow build, the payoff's going to be all the more satisfying when we get to the next episode. So I guess that's where I'm going to round off my review. I don't really have anything else to say on this episode. Do you have anything else? Or
I've got nothing else to talk about. Okay,
so that'll do it for this week's. Next week's is going to be the big one, so it's going to be one that you definitely want to tune into. We'll be on next week, I believe, at the usual time, right? 6 p.m. UK time on Tuesday. We'll be here to talk about episode 3. It's been great to have so many people in the comments chatting all the way through. We hope to see each and every one of you next episode as well, as we keep on trucking towards the finale. So big thank you to everyone in the comments, and until the next video, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.